Hello and welcome to the Colts Cover-2 podcast. I am Joel A. Erickson. I am joined, as always, by Nate Atkins. Nate is in Baltimore. Are you actually in Baltimore, or are you in a suburb of Baltimore right now?
I am in Baltimore. I am right next door to Camden Yards, and so I'm a little
Nice.
sad that the Orioles are not in town. I would love to go check out that park. That's one I've always been wanting to see. So that is not aligned yet, but no, it's a bit of a dreary day here. It's been a little rain's held off, but it's cooled down though. So yesterday was a nice 80-degree practice, and the Ravens facility is out in a suburb. It's kind of remote setting right at their practice facility. That's where training camp is. So that's where we were yesterday, and joint practices can go any number of ways. And we had news and fireworks in that one, so it was pretty interesting.
They are currently playing. We are taping this in the afternoon. They are currently playing the Phillies in Philadelphia, which is not that far from you, but
true.
But it's still a little bit of a ways. I think everything out there is a little further than the actual distance. I want to bring up. I am not there. We only sent one person to Baltimore for this. I am not there right now. So you saw the practice, but I want to bring up what I noticed, which is I have been getting some guff for my Hunter Wohler love because I am from Wisconsin and he is from Wisconsin. But I would like to point out to the listeners that Hunter Wohler had 2 interceptions yesterday, and maybe what I've been seeing is real.
He was the defensive star of practice, and I did not go into it thinking that would be the case, mostly because he didn't think he was either, because he thought he would be on the second team, and all of a sudden he's out there. Zaire Franklin didn't practice, and they decided to try him at linebacker some as well as deep safety, and he was playing sort of a dime linebacker look when the Colts defensive line flushed Lamar Jackson out of the pocket, and he tried to throw back across the middle, and Wohler made a great pick just leaping through the air like he just saw it coming. And cool moment for the 7th-round rookie. He went and kept the practice ball because he never thought he'd be able to pick off a guy like Lamar Jackson. And on the sidelines before that series, Saguna Luby came over to him and told him, "You're going to pick off Lamar next." And Hunter was like, "What are you talking about? I don't even go up against the first team. How would I even do that? I'm not going to do that." And he said, "Oh, I feel it in you. It's coming." So in his mind, Saguna Luby is the first one that saw his greatness before it happened. But I wanted to remind him, no, Joel Erickson actually saw greatness before that. So you can hold on to that title.
I think technically, Lou Anarumo probably saw it before any of us.
And probably someone scouting for the Colts, too.
That's true. Would that be Chad Henry? Is that Chad?
I feel like we would have gotten a nickname for him if it was Chad.
Oh,
the nickname we've heard about Hunter was from Lou Anarumo, which is Eager Beaver.
That's a good point. Normally, you would get a nickname if it's Chad. I'm quickly going to the story where we get the scouts to see who talked.
It might have just been Chris Ballard because it's a defensive back from Wisconsin.
It was not. It was Tyler Hughes, area scout Tyler Hughes, who it should be said is having a pretty good start to training camp. Well, we have to get into this here in a second, but he's having a pretty good start to training camp since one of his defensive backs that they picked, it looked like the starter at outside corner until yesterday at least, and then the other one is playing well at safety and dime linebacker. What's going on with Justin Wally?
So that I wish we knew a little bit more of. So the way that they did the practice, they have 2 different fields they're using. One was Colts offense against Ravens defense, and then the vice versa on the other one. It was a weird setup though, where we're mostly trying to watch the offense because that's what we do when there's a quarterback battle, and that's what drives things. But it was hard to see a lot over to the other one, and you had to walk 20 minutes to get to the other one. A very weird setup here in Baltimore. Did not love that part. I don't know why we couldn't walk between the 2 fields. You had to kind of go all the way around the grandstands. So I didn't get to see as much of the defense We had just kind of heard a little bit about it from some people who were there. I know Zach Hicks from Locked On Colts and SI. He was more watching the defense, so heard a little bit of it secondhand from him. But I did notice at one point the crowd goes crazy. And I look over and Justin Wally's going to battle with Rashad Bateman, and he goes up for a pass breakup and he just punches the ball out of Rashad Bateman's arms. And it was another great play out of Justin Wally on a day when the spotlight was all on him because Travis Ward's banged up, Juju Brents and Jalen Jones are out with hamstring. But then all of a sudden we see Justin Wally has an ice pack on his knee. I don't know exactly how it happened. He was still on the field. He didn't go in. He didn't go somewhere else. He had his pads on and had the ice pack on, which is how it looked when Michael Pittman Jr. had his groin injury the other day, and he's been kind of in and out. So I would take that to indicate that it's not like a serious injury. It wasn't one that he couldn't walk on or needed a cart or anything like that, or that they really had to get him out of there for. But he is dealing with a knee injury. That's what the confirmation was from Colts PR, was he's dealing with a knee injury of some sort. It's got an ice pack on it. But it is one more hit for a secondary that all of a sudden someone better bubble wrap Travis Ward right now, because all these other cornerbacks have gone down, from Juju Brents, Jalen Jones, Justin Wally is now dealing with something. And so all of a sudden the Colts defense had a very nice day from what I could just tell in terms of how the Ravens were moving the ball and trying to get in the end zone. The only times that I really noticed a lot of passes being completed from the Ravens were after that injury. And all of a sudden, some of these backup cornerbacks were out there, a lot of Sam Womack and Alex Johnson and names like that. Guys will probably see on Thursday. I would imagine Wally will not play in that game if he's dealing with this injury. They seem to just be really taking it easy on guys dealing with much of anything. I would expect Michael Pittman Jr. and Travis Ward to not play as well, just out of precaution. But that's kind of where it's at right now, is that they have another secondary injury to deal with at a position that it's just kind of crazy how they all the injuries seem to line at one position. This year, it's the one that they overhauled the most in the offseason. And we talked about all the depth and all the talent, and now they're dealing with some stuff.
Yeah, if you were telling me that there was going to be a position that they were going to have to sign 2 veterans in the second week of camp because of depth issues, corner would have been like the last one I picked. Maybe wide receiver would be the only other one. Mm-hmm. But they had 2 last week. They signed Trey Herndon and Duke Shelley, guys who've been around the league. They're not, obviously the fact that they were available says that they're not those types of players anymore. But they had to go get veterans at that position. Jalen Jones and Juju Brents, we saw Jones go down in practice. It looked bad. And then on top of that, Shane Steichen said that his hamstring injury is a little more severe than Juju's, which for Shane Steichen, that's like as much information as you're going to get about an injury this time of year as possible. Mm-hmm. And that's not a good thing. Brents, it doesn't sound like it's as bad, but the flip side of that is it's a hamstring. And it's also Juju Brents, you have to take the player's history into account a little bit there. And then even Ward, I know Ward played yesterday, correct?
Yeah, he was out there. They seemed to be just giving him some breaks in the first team stuff. But he was back out there for the first time in a few days.
So even he is dealing with something. Shane said tightness in his legs, which is like the least descriptive injury possible. Or injury description possible, but he's dealing with something too. And you thought it felt like that group went 7 deep, but Corey Ballantyne's already gone. They already got rid of him for Chris Lamons. He must just not have looked like he could do the special team stuff. That's the only explanation to me, because Chris Lamons is not a really good player on defense. There's a reason they only played him in emergency situations. Samuel Womack played well for this team last year, but has also been flagged 8 times in camp and struggled significantly with deep balls down the stretch last year. So they've got him. They need Wally to be – they need a couple of these guys to get healthy before the start of the season. I think that's probably why they should and will be cautious with when they bring these guys back.
Yeah, it's a numbers battle right now just to get guys in those spots that have played and that you feel good about. And who knows, maybe they get to a point where they have to try some new things out. Let me throw a name out there for you, Hunter Wooler.
I don't know if he can play corner. I don't know if even I think he can play corner.
That'd be amazing to put on a 7th round rookie. You're a deep safety, you're a dime linebacker, and you're a fill-in outside corner. That would be some versatility. But no, it's I think that's what's going to be hard about this game on Thursday is going to be 100% about the quarterbacks, because I don't sense the Ravens are going to play many guys, many of their starters. That seemed to be the impression of some of the Ravens employees and beat writers we were talking to, and that's the history of John Harbaugh. And so, it's going to be one of those where we've got backup corners out there at a position that's supposed to carry, bring the juice to this defense this year. We're going to have a lot of backups out there, and they're going to be going against backups. And so that side of things is going to be a little less interesting than maybe we were hoping for coming into it. But the important thing is getting these guys healthy. And it does at least help that the injuries to Jones and Brents were early in camp. And, of course, like you said, it's hamstrings, and Jones sounds like it was severe, and Brents has a history. But the way that Jones went down, we initially feared it was something that could be very, very, very bad for him. And so this seems like something at least that they can hopefully manage. They're still, opening day is just a month away from tomorrow, I believe, September 7th, or, 1 month from tomorrow. So around then, so they've got some time to let these heal up. And I just think this is partly why I think Charvarius Ward has barely done much lately. Is I don't sense that it's as much about it's really a bad injury, because I just don't think he'd be out there yesterday at all if that was the case. But they are being very cautious about not risking an injury to him, because they can't afford it at that position, not with that type of player. And he's the type of guy that the position he plays at outside corner in a scheme that's very man coverage based, like that's a guy that doesn't need preseason. They can drop him in week 1. So I don't know if we'll see him this preseason at all, unless, who knows, maybe they get some of these guys back and they just want to try it a little bit. I just don't think we're going to see him on Thursday. Same with Michael Pittman Jr., just out of precaution. So there'll be some guys like that are just not going to be out there as much. DeForest Buckner, he's been getting some rest days. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they sat him. Zaire Franklin got a rest day yesterday after he'd come back for a couple days on that ankle, but he's been limited. They're easing him back in, so I don't think we'll see much of him. I don't think we'll see him on Thursday, maybe later on in preseason. So they're definitely trying to get to opening day. But I think it makes sense, because if we talk about how these guys have actually performed, I thought yesterday was a very impressive day for the talent level of this Colts roster. I mean, because they're going up against a Ravens roster that is pretty loaded, and the reigning AFC North champs, a team that's always in the mix for the postseason, in mix for the Super Bowl. And I thought both sides of the ball, they won the day. I mostly got to watch the offense. But like I said, the defense, I don't know that they really gave up much at all, certainly from Lamar Jackson's end. He just was not completing much at all, even though they were putting out defense out there that there was time, like the starting defense had, some guys I never even heard of or had never even really watched out there playing on defense. And the only mainstay guys that were out there were Kenny Moore, Cam Bynum, Nick Cross, and Kwity Paye. For the most part, it was those guys. Latu had a nice day, but it was a lot of backups at those other spots at all three levels of the defense, and they held their own. So I think that is what kind of stood out to me, just picturing the day they had on defense without getting to see all the specifics of it, was just the talent level of that group collectively is a lot better. Just even with a couple of additions with Cam Bynum and Charvarius Ward, and a scheme that is aggressive and in the face, and that really rattled the Ravens receivers and Lamar Jackson, and it's been a few years since we've seen a pass defense here in Indy that was like really bringing the fight to an offense and getting in their grill and making life really difficult. And that's what it looked like in glimpses yesterday. I think you have to feel good about that.
Yeah, I knew you guys would be mostly spending your time with the quarterbacks, and we're going to spend our time with the quarterbacks here in a second. I think we get little credit, by the way, for starting this podcast off by talking about the defense. It's got to make us like one of the only Colts podcasts to be talking about the defense.
It's almost like we have a guy from Wisconsin on this podcast.
But I was following some Ravens writers, and everything I saw from the Ravens writers about the Ravens offense was pretty encouraging for the Colts defense, because there was a lot of struggle for Lamar Jackson, a lot of short throws, a lot of miscompletions. And like you said, they weren't working with the full deck. One guy that we will see on Thursday night is Anthony Richardson. We're going to see a lot of Anthony Richardson on Thursday night. From what I read, Steichen didn't really give us a whole lot behind his reasoning there. He just kind of said it was happening and moved on. But my understanding is that whatever Richardson does in this game, Jones is going to do in the second game. And I don't think that there's really anything to read into that. I don't. I think they just picked.
Yeah. It's the same exact format for the two, where when Anthony starts on Thursday, he's going to go for a quarter, and then half of the second quarter, Daniel Jones will finish out that second quarter. So I assume basically for the first half, they're going to play offensive starters outside of, I think Michael Pittman Jr. is the one I would not expect to see. But I'm expecting to see like the first team line, and at least maybe Jonathan Taylor they give a break to. Maybe they only play him a little bit and see a little bit more what they have in DJ Giddens and Khalil Herbert, and trying to decide that third string running back spot. But I think they're going to mostly let it go, see what Tyler Warren can do in his first game action, see if A.D. Mitchell can continue to build on a really nice past week of training camp after a tough start. And it's just, this is where we're going to really get to evaluate the quarterbacks, though, is that so far it's, they've done a lot of 11 on 11 throughout camp. They've traded those off with the first team, and they've been close enough in how they've performed that I think we're just going to need to see them in game settings against another opponent. Like I said, I don't know that the Ravens are going to play a lot of their starters, so we're going to have to grade it on a scale. It'll tell us probably more if the Colts just cannot move the ball against a backup defense. But that's not what we saw in the practice. They didn't score a lot of. They only really got in the end zone once through the air against the Ravens yesterday. But they moved it, man. They really moved it. A lot of chunk plays to A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce. The run game looked really good with Jonathan Taylor and Khalil Herbert ripping off some explosive runs. It looked like just that dynamic with either quarterback of the mobile quarterback threat freezing one of the defensive ends got them going, and it looked nice. So that's what you're hoping to see, is that they follow that up on Thursday. But I do think these two games against the Ravens and the Packers, that's going to really tell us where the quarterback battle is. Because they've been pretty even so far. We know the skill players are talented around them. We know the scheme in the run game is similar with the two of them. But we're going to see them in game settings and see how they handle that, and see if they make wise decisions, quick decisions, build chemistry with certain players. I think by the end of the Packers game, we're going to have a good feel of where they're going to go as far as a week one starter.
The one thing that I think will be even is that I don't think either quarterback is really going to see the best players from the other team's defense in the game. Because at least, whenever we've seen joint practices in the past, coaches kind of use that as their best players get those snaps, and then in the practice, and then they don't do anything really in the game. So I think it's probably even that way. I wondered for a little bit if maybe Steichen has been so bent on making sure they each get the same opportunity. I wondered for a little bit if it was going to be alternating series. but he probably wants the quarterbacks to have a chance to get in the rhythm and feel the game and everything like that. And realistically, when it comes down to the competition you're facing, neither team's going to have their best players. That's just kind of the way it goes. It's like you said, that's what the Colts are going to do. That's probably what those two teams are going to do.
And we'll see if Nate Wiggins is allowed to play for the Ravens after he was throwing punches and got carried out of practice. So that I don't know if that'll play.
Carried out of practice?
He kind of. They basically were like shoving him away from the scene and like just continually pushing him off the field, and then told him he had to leave the field entirely. So
that's fun.
He was the aggressor. That one was. I didn't get the best view of that. That was on the opposite field. We just kind of saw everybody run in. But my understanding of it was Tyler Goodson took a hit along the sideline, special teams, and started mostly chirping, maybe a little shoving. He didn't throw any punches, though. And nor initially did the players that the player that hit him or the players that were right by them. It's just Nate Wiggins came running over and just wanted to get in the fray. And I don't know if that's just how he's wired or if that was him being frustrated with A.D. Mitchell beating him on a deep ball and calling him burnt toast to us on the sideline. I don't know if A.D. Mitchell got in his head a little bit and inspired that, but that was interesting. And it was just kind of funny to hear the different perspectives because Shane Steichen comes out and says, you never want fights in these practices. Cam Bynum came out and said it's not a joint practice if you don't have a fight. So they took different levels of enjoyment to the whole thing, but it wasn't anything that on the Colts end got out of hand. It was really just one player from the Ravens that got a little over the top.
Getting physically shoved out of practice you don't see that very often.
You don't.
Also, I have a feeling it was probably a rough time for Nate Wiggins last night. I don't think of the Harbaughs as gentle parent type coaches.
No, and the fact is, like, Tyler Goodson was not asked to leave. Nate Wiggins was the only one who was, and so that's their home base, and they just told him get out of here. So yeah, I don't think it went great for him. But it was the moment with A.D. Mitchell was kind of fun though. So A.D. Mitchell, you trace it back to the start of this. His first week was, frankly, terrible. I don't know how else to describe it. That's his words.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
He said he was bad that first week. He's not.
I had 4 drops for him in the first 4 days, and that was conservative.
And not only that, it just felt like he was slipping in and out of all of his cuts. I couldn't figure out what that was.
Yeah, he wasn't getting the separation we're used to. No, you're right.
It was very strange. But then all of a sudden, just something clicked. I think it was like the practice before the night practice. He had a good day, and then the night practice, he was incredible. And everything looks just different for him right now. I'm just talking about in the moment, which we have to with anybody in training camp, but especially given his trajectory so far in the NFL. But right now, over the past week, he's just looked terrific. And yesterday comes out and he's very juiced up for this practice. Apparently, Quentin Nelson a few days ago stood up in front of the team and really challenged everyone to just bring more juice and energy and talk more out there and make these practices feel lively and not like they're just trying to get through them. And A.D. Mitchell took that to heart, and we've seen the good and bad of that. We saw a moment about a week ago where he was yelling at Daniel Jones for the way he was throwing the ball, and that's when he wasn't playing well, and it wasn't, the body language wasn't the best look at the time, but we saw the kind of the positive version of it yesterday where he came out and just chirping a lot early on, juiced up for the one-on-ones. He's going down the field on fade routes, and he just absolutely obliterated Nate Wiggins 2 times. And the first time he's wide open deep, and Daniel Jones overthrew him out of the end zone. And that's when he ran over to us and he said he called Nate Wiggins burnt toast. And then he runs back over there, and a couple plays later does another same route, deep ball, this time on Chidobe Awuzie, and beat him deep. And Anthony, but there was kind of like other guys converging. So Anthony placed a kind of pretty smart back shoulder throw that he turned around and caught and spun out of bounds. And then he comes over to us and he goes, "See, I told you so." And Chidobe Awuzie had about the saddest walk back to the huddle that I think I've ever seen, because he heard that right then and there. And then he had another fade route that he caught down the sidelines. in 11 on 11. He had 2 plays where he drew interference calls. One of them he drew an interference and still cooked the guy in an out route. The other one was in the end zone where the Ravens defend in the red zone drills, where the Ravens defender broke it up and they're chirping back and they go, "Oh, like we got one." And then AD, once he runs back to the huddle, turns, then sees the flag, and then runs back to them and says, "No, you didn't see that flag there." So he was on another level yesterday. And so that's when they asked for players for us to talk to us. So we got to talk to AD Mitchell, and he toned it down by the time he talked to us. He got very much more in talking a lot about the team and whatnot. But he did say that like he feels like it's his time and his job right now to make this all come together and be the deep threat of this offense, or one of the deep threats of this offense, in an offense that you saw flashes of what they can be yesterday. Of course, we got to see it. We got to see them pick a quarterback. We got to see that quarterback stay upright. We got to see AD carry this into games the way he didn't do last year off a good camp. There's a lot of unknowns out there, but the mix of the attention the run game gets and how explosive it can be when they manipulate the math with the mobile quarterback, combined with taking advantage of that to go deep and intermediate to Alec Pierce and AD Mitchell, while also having Tyler Warren as a completely new element of the offense to catch underneath, or passes across the middle, turn screen plays into chunk gains, catch contested balls. Like, we saw what this offense can be yesterday against a really good pretty talented Ravens defense. So I'm just curious to see if they can build on that the rest of the way and just make this come together. And eventually they're going to pick a quarterback, and that's when we're going to hopefully see them build that chemistry and cohesion with one guy heading into week 1. But there's been a lot of reasons to be worried about this offense with the quarterbacks and how they performed early on and the indecision of who to start, and some young players who have to prove it. But the talent is really real on this team, and we saw a lot of that yesterday.
Nate, I am from Wisconsin. You are from Ohio. You are a Cleveland Guardians fan. Are you aware that something is going on in the Cleveland Guardians game while we're taping this?
I have been trying to stay locked in here in Baltimore, so I've not been watching that. So I don't know what's going on.
Okay, well, I can't say it.
Oh, I see what's going on.
I can't say it out loud.
Cannot say it out loud.
I know we're taping the podcast. For listeners, maybe this is more of my life than you need to know. I frequently have a TV on in my office as background noise while we're doing stuff, and just while I'm writing, all that kind of stuff. That's how I know what's going on. But I just want to make sure Nate knows, just in case he has a chance to take a peek at it. Again, it's not something I can say out loud.
So Joel's going to carry the rest of this podcast because I'm very distracted.
Is bad.
Here's the Hunter Wooler. Here's the half-hour Hunter Wooler breakdown.
Which is bad because I wasn't at the practice. I do want to know about the Colts offensive line and how they looked against Baltimore's scheme. Baltimore plays a unique scheme. It's so unique that when one of the Harbaughs leaves and goes to Michigan, they have to go back to or they lose a defensive coordinator. They have to go to each other to get one, to get a new coordinator. How did the offensive line look against the Ravens' scheme and pass rush? Because the last time I saw them, the Colts pass rush was kind of tearing them apart.
Yeah, I will say there were some moments of shakiness in pass pro. It mostly came up late when they were in like the 2-minute drill, and Anthony Richardson took 2 sacks. He was holding the ball longer than he normally does. So some of that was, the coverage was working, but they were starting to get beat a little bit as the day wore on. But they really looked great in the run game, I thought. Less so maybe in the tight quarters when they got into the goal line, red zone type stuff. They didn't totally – it was kind of an even draw in some of those moments. They didn't road grade them at that point. But when they did the full field stuff in the run game, offensive line looked great. And man, it was like they were getting Quentin Nelson out in space, and he was bringing it. And Tanner Bortolini started at center for the second straight day, and they'd been rotating between him and Danny Pinter. And this was the first time I've noticed that they've gone with Bort 2 straight days. Unless
Did Pinter practice?
I'm pretty sure I saw him out there with the second team. Yeah.
Okay, because he had missed the previous day, so I was
Yeah.
wondering if there was an
Okay.
injury.
Yeah, that's
issue
why.
there.
So maybe that's why Bortolini started the 2 days ago, but they gave him the start here with Pinner was back. Yeah, I remember seeing it with the second team. Now that I'm trying to remember the numbers offhand, but so there seemed to be good cohesion there with that group in the run game, though. Second straight practice with Bort starting at center. They just got really nice movement in the interior with Matt Gonzalez and Quentin Nelson and Tanner Bortolini, and it made it so that Khalil Herbert and Jonathan Taylor could just really kind of work off those zone blocks and cut back and have big lanes. And so I thought the run game part was the most impressive, really overall, because we just hadn't gotten into a ton of that so far. It's been such a focus on the quarterbacks in the passing game, and we're waiting for the pads to come on. And this was a day where they wanted to test it out in the full field stuff. That looked really good.
The way I kind of see that center battle is, a little bit the way I see the quarterback battle through the first couple of weeks. It's just, it's been fairly even. There's been some concerning stuff from Bortolini and one-on-ones that I've noticed, but there has been with Pinter as well. And I think it's just, in the end, if they're fairly similar, you probably go with the player with the upside, which is what I think is probably going to happen at quarterback, where you go with Richardson because of the upside and the explosive plays he gives you. This is me saying this before they played a preseason game, so that obviously things could change in the next couple of weeks. But I think that's my initial read on this, on the competition at center, which has been more of a real competition than I think most people expected.
Yeah, I think that has mostly been them recognizing that in the past they've given too many positions to players just because they're the next guy after somebody left. And so they lose Ryan Kelly in free agency. Bortolini started, a handful of games last year, but, he's just a second-year player. And in the past, they've handed spots to players just to do so. I mean, just a couple of years ago, Danny Pinter was in that spot where they subbed him in at right guard. Now, that was further complicated by the fact that they're moving him positions, and we later quickly learned that he is just not a right guard at all. So that was an added problem to it. But it was an issue that they felt like they've had players that didn't really have to compete for anything, and they wanted to see what that would bring out of Tanner Bortolini, to have him compete with a guy that has started a decent amount of games in this league, has played a decent amount, and they know what they have in Danny Pinter. So he is like the fallback option, I think, if Bortolini is struggling at a position where he's got to really take command. Same thing with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, where Daniel Jones has started 69 games, and he very much has looked like you just know pretty predictably what he's going to do play in and play out. There's a floor he brings. Anthony Richardson is the ceiling because he's the more explosive runner. He's got the deep ball. So that's a little bit more of where that's at, is to unlock the real upside in the offense. They have to go with players that are getting better in their career, early on in their career. That's Danny Pinter and Daniel Jones, I think, are more settled into their careers. I think that's a fair comparison.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else from the past week. There is one thing I think we should talk about a little bit, and that's just the kicker battle, because people don't think about the kicker this time of year, and then it comes up in the worst possible moment in like game 1 or game 2 or game 3, and all of a sudden it's the thing everybody's talking about. So it's a pretty easy kicker. Did you have any kicks yesterday? Field goals?
They did. Yeah, they did some kicks. They ended some of the 2-minute stuff with kicks. I did not watch a ton of what the kickers were doing. I'm going to be honest. Special teams, I just tend to be caught doing other stuff. Yesterday, just in the weeds, but I was busy trying to pre-write some stuff at that time too. So I don't have a lot to offer on that. I like to rely on Brian Mason because he seems to remember every single movement anyone has ever had that he's ever seen in his life. and he lays it out wonderfully for us. So, I mean, I am interested to talk to him next time we get coordinators to kind of see how that's been developing, because that has felt, the way he's described it in the little that we've gotten to see, as if like Spencer Schrader, he's the one to beat there. And Max Trujillo came on as an undrafted guy that has talent that they wanted to push. And the same deal here with other positions. They don't want to just hand a kicker spot, because that's another position they did that with a couple years ago, just giving it to Rodrigo Blankenship, even though they had essentially benched him the year before. And then, like you said, we get into week 1 and week 2, and it's all of a sudden a disastrous situation for them. So they don't want to have Spencer Schrader feel like it's just his job no matter what. But I do sense he's the front runner there. And that's another one where, like, that's something the preseason games are going to help us tell, where it's actually more of a game situation, and they'll try kicks. They can try whatever they want, just to they can kick in spots where they normally would go for it in the regular season, just to get a little bit of intel and separation there. So we'll learn some more in the next 2 games too.
Nate is like the rest of you. He's not thinking about the kickers yet. But the numbers were Spencer Schrader was at 87%. Maddox Trujillo was at 74%. It's not just notable that Schrader is far ahead of Trujillo. It's also notable though that Brian Mason said they'd like their kicker to be 90% in training camp, and Schrader is not there yet. So I made a mental note to just, Brian Mason tends to be a perfectionist, but at the same time that's what they're looking for. And so I've made it a mental note to see if he's making his kick since then. I know he made a very long attempt after we got the 87%. I would like a Brian Mason style update from Shane Steichen on the quarterback competition, just because with the kicker you don't have to do any guessing at all or any of your own evaluating. He just tells you exactly what he's thinking. Could use that from Shane Steichen.
The evaluation from Shane yesterday on how the quarterbacks played was, I thought they both did some good things.
That's pretty consistent with what he said most of camp.
It is. So I don't think we are going to get any ability to read where that's at through Shane's words. We're just going to have to kind of use our eyes and where they're thinking with it.
The only time he hasn't said something like that is usually on a bad day. Because Shane, as much as he doesn't like to tell you things, can't really bring himself to say somebody had a good day when they didn't. So that's a clue for those of you who watch the press conferences and stuff like that. If he doesn't, say something superlative, I think there's usually a little bit of a warning in that. But yeah, that's pretty. They both had a good day is a lot of what he said. I will say this, that is a lot of what the quarterback has been. They are playing to their competition. Is that the best way to put it? They're in lockstep. Usually when there's, I think the one day where one of them looked better than the other that sticks out to me was the other day in red zone. Anthony Richardson had a really rough day on Saturday, and Daniel Jones didn't have a great day, but it wasn't bad. Like the first time they did red zone, it was 4 of 14 and 5 of 14. On Saturday, Richardson went 3 of 10, and Daniel Jones had a couple of touchdown passes and was more accurate. That's the only time, though, that I think I can remember the quarterbacks not coming away from a practice feeling like, oh, they kind of did the same thing in their own ways. Because Jones does complete more passes, but it's usually for less yardage.
The only the most exciting thing that Shane said yesterday was not to us at the backdrop. It was when the Colts had their 4th false start of the practice. So those did come back. I was far enough away from it. I couldn't quite get a sense if that was cadence. A couple of them I know were not. It just one player would jump off. But at one point we got to hear it when they were close in the red zone and had their 4th false start. And Shane just screamed out, "We're not going to do that bleep anymore." So he was a little fed up with that holding up the practice. So
Shane,
that was the most
Shane
exciting.
is funny. Shane is funny because he spent a lot. He kind of grew up in the NFL around Phillip Rivers, and so a lot of times he peppers his speech with dadgummits and stuff like that. But he's also not a guy who's not going to swear at all. So you get some cusses. You get some cusses if you're paying attention.
This is different than when Jim Caldwell was the coach and he had a cuss jar. If any of the assistants cussed, they had to put money in the jar. That's not how they run this. He will let it fly if needed. And I will say that when he did that, they didn't have any more false starts. That was like halfway through practice. They had so many to begin, and then that did it. So I guess maybe that's the magic trick is when he has that happen in a game, he just has to scream a cuss word at somebody and get them to lock in. When he goes from the dadgummit to the cuss words that it's time to – he means business. It's time to go.
Noted Nate, a noted fan of old school coaching.
Yes.
A noted fan of old school yelling and coaching.
That's what I think going into this. That's how you solve. That's what coaching is, right? You just yell at players and they do better. I know sometimes we'll get people who think that just because that's what kind of younger levels of coaching are. But there's a time to get urgent, and they need it. Too many false starts so far in camp.
Going into the preseason game tomorrow, some stuff that we've got to pay attention to. I think without the corners available and some of the other stuff going on, I think it's a little bit less interesting. I'm going to give three guys that I think are interesting without for people to watch, just without based off of training camp and without really any explanation. You've kind of heard us talk about it, but just guys that I think are going to play.
We already know that Hunter Wooler's one of them, so give us your other two.
No. I was going to go DJ Giddens.
Okay.
I was going to go Anthony Gold. And I was going to go with Joe Bocci. Those were going to be the three I was going to tell people to watch.
No, those are three good names for this. DJ Giddens, we didn't see a lot yesterday, but I am interested to see how he fits in because his skill set is just something that Colts have not had much of. They didn't have any of last year, which is a guy who can catch out of the backfield, number one. I think that's something that is really going to help this offense out because, last year they had the 3 800-yard wide receivers and nobody else caught passes. Somehow A.D. Mitchell finished fourth on the team in receptions, and he had the lowest catch percentage in franchise history. That's how much of a drop-off it was. There weren't answers. They could not handle these. When the Colts would drop back on 3rd and 5 and teams would throw zone coverage at them, well, that doesn't always happen on 3rd down, but when they're trying to convert against zone coverage on they just didn't have answers because the receivers weren't really built to win that way. They didn't have any tight ends that were reliable, and then they didn't have any running backs either. And so that's where when they dial up some of these explosive plays and they're not open, the times that they do cover them, Alec Pierce flying down the field or A.D. Mitchell, it's going to really help to have a check down like that out of the backfield. And that's what DJ Giddens has shown in moments in camp. I'm interested to see if they can build on that in the preseason and bring more of it out. Because the way that this running back room is shaping up is we know the bell cow is Jonathan Taylor, but he's a dynamic runner and he does not excel at pass protection or receiving. DJ Giddens has a lot of skills there that we need to see in a more real game setting, especially you go back to his college film, and that's where he was affected by the hand injury in both ways, pass pro and receiving, and it's looked good so far. But they need to build that out because then that third running back spot is between Khalil Herbert and Tyler Goodson, and I think Tyler Goodson has the edge just because of special teams. But that comes back to if they feel good enough about DJ Giddens and they feel like we've got our bell cow, we've got a guy who can do a mix of running, receiving, and pass pro in DJ Giddens, that third spot then doesn't have to be about offense very much. It has to be about special teams. If they don't have that kind of trust in DJ Giddens yet, that could give a little bit more of a lane to Khalil Herbert, who does look good as a runner. He looks, I think, like he could he would be a very good third down back or third string back to kind of mix in as a runner. He just doesn't have, the special teams background as much in the third down game. So if DJ Giddens can answer that role, it's going to be in a lot more than people think, not only because they need a third down back, but reality is Jonathan Taylor misses some games. And if they're going to run as much as they want to run, they have to be prepared for that role. And they want to feel like they can step into, they can put another running back in there and not just lose all the effectiveness, which is what happened last year with Trey Sermon. So DJ Giddens, for only being a 5th round pick, is going to be one of the more important 5th round picks you're going to see.
Yep. That's what I've got for the preseason game tomorrow night. The Colts then.
One other thing I want to watch, though.
Oh, what you got?
I need to
Hunter
see.
Wohler.
Well, yes. But I got to watch the show yesterday, and it's going to be hard for him to top that, but maybe 3 picks will do it. I want to see Anthony Richardson on the deep ball because that's been kind of weird this camp, is that there have been times like at that Thursday night practice where it looked really good. There were a couple reps yesterday, back shoulder type stuff that looked good, but there's times I've noticed him like it's like he's trying to take something off of it. There was a rep yesterday in a one-on-one where he had I think it was Ashton Doolin. He had pretty wide open, but not a ton of space in the back of the end zone. And it's like at the last second when he went to loft it, he just aimed it and had the lowest trajectory and it hit the defensive back square in the back. And it was not a tall defensive back. And it was just like, I think there's times when he's afraid of overthrowing it and he's trying to aim it. And some of that, I think, is just the fact that he has not emphasized the deep ball in his training. He took time off, from throwing. It's been a lot of short underneath stuff. Like yesterday, I think he was 10 of 13, but it was a lot of short passes. It's just rusty, and he needs to get back to just being able to air it out because that's the separator. That in the rushing upside is the separator from him to Daniel Jones. That's how he's going to win this competition. Is if he can look like a guy that strikes fear into defenses with his legs to where they stack the box, and then he can just put it down the field in places that not many quarterbacks can. That's something I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be able to match no matter what he does in these preseason games. But we got to see it get sharper. And if it's not sharp tomorrow, when that's Anthony's quarter and a half stretch that he's going to get before Daniel Jones gets, basically 2 quarters between the next 2 weeks after that, that's where this competition can stay tight. But I think if he hits a couple of those deep balls, it looks more like last year's deep ball in conjunction with, having better command of the offense and better accuracy. Like he could take control of this quarterback battle if he just tightens that up a little bit.
Yeah, I've said all along, I think that, if they're basically close from an operation and efficiency standpoint, that Richardson's, explosive capabilities are what should put him over the top. I still think that's the case. We'll see what happens in these preseason games. Things are off and running. We've got a preseason game followed by 3 days of practice, followed by a joint practice, and then another preseason game. Things are on the move. Nate will be there. I will be watching at home with the rest of you, and we'll talk some point next week. For the IndyStar, I'm Joel A. Erickson. This is Nate Atkins, and the Colts play the Ravens tomorrow night.